Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you the first part of the new fanfic What If Reborn in Highschool DxD as a Lucifuge. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Quick update. The series What If Transmigrated in Bleach World will be going on hold soon, since we've nearly caught up with the author. So now, I will be using the second most popular among the fanfics on the previous poll as the replacement for the series What If Transmigrated in Bleach World. As such, please vote in the poll and let me know which story you'd like to see next. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 1. The Underworld. The fabled realm of devils, fallen angels, and a host of supernatural beings. Within a magnificent castle, a young man diligently practiced his swordsmanship in the courtyard. 9,997, 98, 99, 10,000. He lowered his sword, panting, and wiped the sweat from his brow. The 16-year-old had silver white hair and sharp, intelligent glowing orange eyes. Though his handsome features still held a trace of boyish charm, his demeanor possessed an unusual maturity and resolve. No slacking, Roy. You have 100,000 swings to complete today, a cool, authoritative voice called from behind. Yes, sister, Roy replied with a resigned sigh. She's always so serious during training, he muttered under his breath. Not a shred of cuteness. He resumed his practice. Roy was a transmigrator, a how and why lost to the mists of time. His current name, Roy Lucifuge. At first, he'd been doubtful, but after several years in this world, the reality was undeniable. He was living in the world of Highschool DxD. Devils, fallen angels, yokai, spirits, angels, even dragons and gods, beings of myth and legend were real here. The woman who'd just spoken was his older sister, Graphia Lucifuge. In the original story, she was Surzex Lucifer's queen, renowned as the strongest of his peerage, the silver-haired Annihilation Queen. However, in this reality, things were different. Born into the prestigious extra-demon house of Lucifuge, Graphia's family had served the old Satan Lucifer for generations. During the Devil Civil War, she'd fought for the old Satan faction, eventually clashing with Seraphal Leviathan for the title of strongest female devil. Though she didn't win, her power rivaled that of a Satan. This elevated House Lucifuge to a position of power within the underworld, independent of the Lucifers. However, the war had decimated their ranks, leaving only Graphia and Roy, the last male heir. Roy had initially believed that being born into a powerful devil family, with such a strong sister, guaranteed him a life of easy power and a harem of beautiful girls. Riser Phoenix, in that regard, was the embodiment of every devil's dream. Reality, however, proved harsher. Despite his lineage, Roy lacked any significant talent for demonic power. After years of relentless training, he was only a low-class devil. His peers, Rias and Sona, had already reached high class. He'd been tempted to give up, but Graphia's unwavering belief in him pushed him forward. Her strict training regime was a constant in his life. Unfortunately, this also earned him a reputation as a talentless failure within the underworld. He didn't let it bother him. 99,997, 98, 99, 100,000. He finished his sword swings, his arms shaking, sweat pouring down his face. He was too exhausted to even wipe it away. And this was just the beginning of his daily training. Take a break, Roy. We'll start magic practice soon, Graphia said, a rare smile softening her usually stern features. Alright, sister, Roy gasped, collapsing onto the ground. After a short rest, it was time for magic. Years of practice, hampered by his lack of aptitude, had yielded only a handful of basic spells. Teleportation, memory manipulation, magic bullets, healing, and, most importantly, the contract magic necessary for forming pacts with familiars and prospective servants. Of course, forming a peerage required evil pieces, something he didn't yet possess. The world of Highschool DxD was a fascinating place. While humans were the majority, true power resided with the devils and gods. Above even them were beings like Ophis, the infinite dragon god, and Great Red, the true red dragon god emperor, entities at the very apex of power. In such a world, Roy refused to be ordinary. He wouldn't stand idly by while the girls he admired ended up with someone else. If he couldn't be ordinary, he would be extraordinary. Lacking magical talent, he dedicated himself to the sword. While others played, he trained. While others rested, he trained. His relentless dedication had honed his swordsmanship to an exceptional level. He was confident that no one in this world could match his skill with a blade. In his past life, he'd been regular Joe. But now, reborn into this dangerous and exciting world, he would achieve his dreams. And to do that, he needed power. Chapter 2: The Only Male at Koa Academy. Kendo Captain returns. The next day, Roy packed his bags for the return to Koa Academy. Summer break was over, it was time for his second year. Each devil family in the underworld governed a specific territory. House Lucifuge was no different. However, due to Roy's underwhelming power, Graphia hadn't assigned him a territory of his own. She'd placed him at Koa Academy, jointly controlled by the Gremory and Citri clans. This way, she could keep a closer eye on him. He was, after all, the last male Lucifuge, the future of their house. At the Koa Academy gates, groups of girls chattered and laughed, their youthful energy infectious. Roy noted, with some amusement, that he was the only male student present. His intervention had prevented the school from becoming co-ed, as it did in the original story. He remained the sole exception. Issei Hayadu hadn't transferred, and Roy didn't know what had become of him. Perhaps he'd already been killed by a fallen angel. Mid-conversation, the girls noticed Roy. Their chatter died down as they turned to stare. Wow, he's so handsome. Which upperclassman is that? Are you a new student? You don't even recognize Roy-senpai? He's the only boy at Koa Academy. Our very own Prince Charming. And the Kendo Club captain. Roy offered a polite smile, unfazed by the attention. Handsome, elegant, and the captain of the Kendo Club, he was the perfect Prince Charming in the eyes of every girl at Koa Academy. He was used to this by now. He walked towards the school building, ignoring the whispers and admiring glances. Roy, a voice called out. The crowd parted, revealing a girl with vibrant crimson hair, brighter than any natural shade. It was Rias Gremory, Koa Academy's resident idol. Standing next to Rias were Akino Himajima, the Academy's second most popular idol, and Kaneko Toju, the quiet but adorable first-year student. Good morning, Rias-senpai, Akeno-senpai, and Kaneko-chan, Roy greeted them cheerfully. He'd made it a point to befriend Rias, Akino, and Student Council President Sona Citri during his first year. Good morning, Roy, Rias replied, smiling. Despite his lack of talent, she admired his work ethic. Also, thanks to Roy's influence, her peerage was currently limited to Kaneko and Akino. She hadn't encountered Gasper or Kiba yet. Morning, Kaneko mumbled, offering a small wave. Era, Roy. You always greet Rias first. Am I not as important to you? Akino teased, feigning heartbreak, tears welling in her eyes. Roy sighed inwardly. Akino's dramatic flair was unmatched. He'd been caught off guard by it when they first met. Of course you're important to me, Akeno-senpai, Roy replied sincerely. Akino blinked, momentarily stunned by his earnest response, a blush creeping up her cheeks. Rias pouted. Are you saying I'm less important than Akino? She huffed playfully, hands on her hips, leaning forward. She seemed oblivious to how the pose accentuated her figure. Roy's headache returned. Rias, please don't pick up Akino's bad habits, he thought with a sigh. Seeing his exasperated expression, Rias giggled. She'd been teasing. She had a soft spot for the hard-working underclassmen. She wouldn't tease just anyone like this. Come on, class is about to start, Rias announced, heading towards the school building. Roy followed. He was in Class 2A, while Rias and Akino were third years, and Kaneko was a first year. Their paths diverged. As Roy reached his classroom, a chorus of greetings met him. "Good morning, Captain. You've gotten even more handsome over the break, Captain. Captain, we haven't seen each other all summer. How about a hug?" The most enthusiastic of the girls was Aika Kiria, known for her surprisingly bold personality despite an initial shyness. She loved teasing Roy and often engaged him in conversations most boys their age would find interesting. Next to Aika were Keites and Murayama, two other attractive girls who had played minor roles in the original story. All three were elite members of the Kendo Club. Chapter 3: The Cheat Finally Awakens. Roy observed the girls' diligent Kendo practice. He'd shared some techniques, surprised by their natural aptitude. He even considered adding them to his peerage. However, after some thought, he decided to wait. Choosing servants was a serious matter. Evil pieces were a finite resource. They were based on chess pieces. A rating game peerage consisted of 1 king, 1 queen, 2 rooks, 2 knights, 2 bishops, and 8 pawns, 16 in total. The current mouse distributed 15 of these, excluding the king. The king piece, capable of drastically enhancing its user's power, was considered too dangerous for general distribution. Only Ajuka Beelzebub, the creator of the evil pieces system, could bestow it. Choosing servants required careful consideration. Roy often daydreamed about unlimited evil pieces. It would solve so many problems. But it was just a fantasy. "Good morning, everyone," he greeted the girls with a smile. Classes dragged on. Roy even dozed off. Finally, the bell rang, signaling the end of another mind-numbing school day. Club activities. He joined the Kendo Club members from his class at the dojo. Leaving them to their own practice, Roy retreated to his private training room. Even without Graphia's watchful eye, he wouldn't slack off. He had a daily quota to meet. 99,000, 997, 98, 99, 100,000. He completed his swings, arms trembling. Was this his limit? He stared at his shaking hands, a wave of frustration washing over him. The plot was about to begin. Fallen angels, Riser Phoenix, the White Dragon Emperor, powerful adversaries awaited. What could he do with his current, meager strength? The thought was unsettling. Was this the peak of his potential? Ding! The strongest Devil King system has been activated. Access functions to learn more. Roy froze. A voice echoed in his mind. Then, a surge of elation. He was no stranger to the concept of systems. Since his arrival, he'd secretly longed for a cheat, a golden finger. 16 years had passed with no such luck. He'd almost given up hope. But now, it had finally arrived. Perhaps golden fingers were just fashionably late. He closed his eyes, focusing on the system interface. It didn't offer instant power, but something potentially even better, evil pieces. System-granted pieces were mutated, significantly stronger than standard ones. And, crucially, they were unlimited. He could create a peerage of any size. His fantasy of infinite pieces had become reality. Moreover, due to an integrated king piece ability, every successful contract would strengthen him, the power boost proportional to the servant's strength. With enough strong servants, his power could grow exponentially. There was a catch, however. He couldn't contract with someone whose power vastly outstripped his own. As a low-class devil, he was limited to those below Mao class. He mentally reviewed his options. The list was short, especially considering his preference for female servants. Asia Argento, Zenobia, Irina Shidu, Rosweiss, Ravel Phoenix. Perhaps the 3 girls from the Kendo Club? Even contracting all of them would probably only elevate him to Mao class, which wasn't enough. Maybe even Graphia? He shook his head and continued exploring the system's functions. There was another option, world travel. Periodically, the system would present a selection of worlds for him to visit. This was it. This was the solution. With access to other worlds, finding powerful servants would be much easier. He eagerly selected the world travel function. 3 options materialized before him. How to raise a boring girlfriend. His mind immediately conjured images of the main heroines, Arari, Utaha, and Megumi. They were ordinary humans, lacking combat prowess. They wouldn't contribute much to his power. Highschool of the Dead, a world on the brink of a zombie apocalypse. Seiko Busujima was the standout here. A skilled swordswoman with a refined demeanor, she was also a surprisingly capable homemaker. Her kendo skills were impressive, even by Roy's standards. Compared to ordinary humans, she was a prodigy. And then there was her bloodlust. Roy wasn't repelled by it. In fact, he found it intriguing, a mark of a true warrior. Unlike Arari, who'd likely remain weak even as a devil, Seiko possessed immense potential. He suspected she might even possess mid-class devil strength upon transformation. Miss Kobayashi's dragon maid, this was a non-starter. Toru and Kanna were ridiculously powerful, far beyond his current level. And they were dragons. The difficulty of forming a contract with them was astronomical. Devils weren't inherently weak. Their immortality was a testament to their inherent power. But contracting dragons like Toru and Kanna would require, at minimum, Ma-class strength. They were likely transcendent class beings, and their dragon blood further amplified the difficulty. He had one shot. He chose Highschool of the Dead. Chapter 4, Seiko Busujima. The third option, Miss Kobayashi's dragon maid. Roy dismissed this one immediately. Toru and Kanna were vastly more powerful than he was. Also, they were dragons, making a contract significantly more challenging. Devil bloodlines weren't weak, the original story established their near immortality. A race capable of such longevity couldn't be inherently frail. Even so, contracting with dragons like Toru and Kanna would require at least Satan-class power. They were likely transcendent class, their dragon blood adding another layer of difficulty. The system's world travel function had limitations. He only had one jump available. He had to make it count. His power would increase with time, granting him more opportunities to travel. The unvisited worlds wouldn't disappear. He could always return later. He made his choice, Highschool of the Dead. Contracting Seiko Busujima would undoubtedly propel him to mid-class devil status. Roy tapped the Highschool of the Dead panel. A flash of white light engulfed him, and he vanished from the kendo dojo. He reappeared on the rooftop of a school building, another flash of white light marking his arrival. No! Don't bite me! Help! Someone, please! Ack! Get off, you bastard! The air was thick with screams. Roy looked down to see the school grounds in chaos. Students were attacking each other, tearing and biting. Screams of terror and pain echoed through the air, a full-blown apocalypse. Is this Fujimi Academy? He wondered, surveying his surroundings. He recognized the school setting but needed to be sure. This was his first system-assisted jump, and he wasn't sure where he'd materialize. No! Hiya! Thwack! A sound from the other side of the rooftop drew his attention. He walked over to see a familiar scene playing out. Takashi Komuro, Rei Miyamoto, and Hisashi Egu. He watched as Hisashi turned, then Takashi caved his head in with a baseball bat. Rei stood by, screaming in horror. It was Fujimi Academy. And the story had just begun. Excuse me, Roy said, startling the pair. Could you direct me to the kendo dojo? Relieved he wasn't another zombie, they visibly relaxed. However, having just witnessed the death of her boyfriend, Rei was understandably distraught and unresponsive. Takashi, too, seemed lost in grief. Roy shrugged. No answer was an answer in itself. He turned and leapt from the rooftop. What? He jumped! Takashi exclaimed, running to the edge. That was a fatal drop, even without the zombies below. He looked down, but Roy was gone. Roy landed gracefully in the corridor below. He would search the school floor by floor, hoping to find Seiko. He had no interest in Takashi or Rei. Groan. Several zombies, attracted by the sound of his landing, shambled towards him. Bloody, mangled, with vacant white eyes and grotesque, contorted faces, they were a gruesome sight. Swish! Thwack! With a speed imperceptible to the naked eye, his wooden sword flashed. Heads flew. Bodies dropped. It was his practice sword from the Kuo Academy Kendo Dojo. Despite being made of wood, it cleaved through zombie flesh with ease, leaving him unstained. Years of dedicated practice had honed his skill to this level. If he could master control of his breathing, he suspected he could generate sword beams. He moved quickly, clearing out zombies as he searched the floors. Descending a stairwell, he entered another corridor. A large group of zombies were clustered around a classroom door, pushing and clawing. Crash! The door and windows gave way, and the zombies surged inside. A blood-curdling scream echoed through the hallway, sending the zombies into a frenzy. It also drew the attention of other survivors in the vicinity. Roy moved towards the sound, his wooden sword a blur of motion. Heads fell so fast it seemed they were detaching themselves. As he cleared a path through the horde, he noticed someone else fighting on the other side of the corridor. His eyes lit up. A girl with long purple hair and an impassive expression. Tall and graceful, even the standard school uniform couldn't hide her athletic physique. Every movement was precise and elegant, like a seasoned martial artist. Her wooden sword, crimson with blood, cracked zombie skulls with deadly efficiency. It was Seiko Busujima. Chapter 5, Seiko's Surprise, a Servant's Offer. Seiko Busujima. In the anime, she possesses immense popularity, surpassing even the main female lead, Miyamoto Rei, and Takagi Saya. Following behind Seiko Busujima was Shizuka Morikawa. She is Fujimi Academy school doctor, and also a mature, stunning beauty with long, flowing golden hair. Her classic professional attire, a black pencil skirt and white blouse, accentuated her incredibly curvaceous figure. More importantly, this beautiful woman had been single for as long as she had been alive and possessed a naturally airhead personality. Even the worldly Roy couldn't help but admire her. Roy wasn't one to be easily swayed by beauty. In his year at Kuo Academy, he had seen more than his fair share of attractive women. He was particularly acquainted with Rias, Akino, and Kaneko, each of them elegant and noble heiresses. However, Shizuka Morikawa seemed to be an exception. Seeing Seiko still fully engaged in slaying zombies, Roy flashed to her side, his eyes fixed intently upon her. "Look out!" Seiko cried, assuming the figure that suddenly appeared before her was a zombie. She swung her katana instinctively. Realizing her mistake the moment the blade left its sheath, she gasped. Clack, asterisk. To Seiko's surprise, her strike was blocked by a wooden sword. Looking up, she saw a young man slightly taller than her 174 centimeters frame, his silvery white hair tousled by the wind. His features were delicate and handsome, his eyes sparkling like stars, captivating her gaze. This incredibly attractive young man possessed an air of nobility, the unmistakable mark of one born into high society. As the daughter of the renowned Busujima swordsmanship family, Seiko was an impeccable judge of such things. "Be careful." Shizuka, noticing Seiko's sudden hesitation, called out a warning. She saw the numerous zombies still approaching. However, the instant she spoke, every zombie in front of them collapsed, their heads rolling to the side. Seiko's pupils constricted. Such remarkable swordsmanship. Even Seiko, from a lineage of renowned swordsmen, was stunned. She hadn't even seen him draw his sword. Furthermore, the zombies' necks didn't sever until seconds after the strike. Just how fast was his swordsmanship? Who exactly was this noble young man? Filled with shock and curiosity, Seiko looked at Roy. "Hello, Seiko-senpai," Roy said, offering an elegant, aristocratic bow. As the sole heir of the house of Lucifuge, his older sister Graphia had drilled him relentlessly on proper noble etiquette. Such refined manners and graceful demeanor didn't seem out of place even in this hellish landscape. Seiko, seeing Roy's formal greeting, returned the gesture with equal seriousness. "Greetings, Kohai," she replied. Seeing her serious response, Roy couldn't help but smile inwardly. He wasn't one for strict adherence to noble customs. This was his first encounter with Siko, and unsure how to address her, he had defaulted to his ingrained training. After all, in his past life, he was anything but smooth. "Siko-senpai, I'm quite taken with you. Please become my servant." With the greetings out of the way, Roy stated his purpose directly. Though blunt, as a man of few words, he couldn't conjure up sweet nothings to woo a girl. Besides, Siko might not appreciate such an approach. Siko blinked, stunned. She thought she had misheard him. "Kohai, could you repeat that? I believe I misheard you." Just as Roy prepared to reiterate his offer, a cry echoed from a nearby classroom. "Ah! Stay away. Don't come any closer." A girl's voice, filled with terror and tears. Roy paused, realizing that in his focus on Siko, he had forgotten the others trapped in the classroom. When the windows and door had been breached earlier, several zombies had gotten inside. Hearing the cries, Siko turned towards the classroom, about to rush to the rescue. But the noble young man vanished before her eyes. Roy reached the classroom first. 3 zombies remained inside. The others had been dispatched with a nail gun, wielded by a stout young man. However, the nail gun was now empty. Trapped, the young man and a girl could only watch in despair as the zombies closed in. Thump! 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 Just as they closed their eyes, bracing for the inevitable, a sound like vegetables being chopped echoed through the room, followed by the thud of bodies hitting the floor. After a long moment without pain, the girl cautiously opened her eyes. She saw a young man with silvery white hair, delicate features, and striking good looks. His eyes, in particular, seemed to sparkle like stars, holding her gaze captive. The girl stared at her rescuer, speechless. Roy recognized the stunned girl as Saya Takagi. The prodigious girl had a surprisingly well-developed figure for her 155 centimeters height. Her petite frame and long twin tails gave her an endearingly vulnerable appearance, evoking a protective instinct. Most importantly, at only 16, she already boasted an F-cup bust, a truly remarkable sight. She was the epitome of a delicate, yet voluptuous, twin-tailed loli. Next to Saya Takagi stood the heavy-set Hirano Koda. "Are you all right?" Roy asked the two, still stunned from their near-death experience. Saya, seemingly lost in thought, continued to stare at him without speaking. Hirano, on the other hand, gave a weak, pale smile. He clutched one arm, which was bleeding profusely, clearly having been bitten by a zombie. Roy frowned, seeing Hirano's injury. He hadn't expected him to be bitten. Chapter 6, Pink Twintails Saya Takagi. Could it be that his presence had altered the course of events? Regardless, Hirano's fate was sealed. Just then, Siko Busujima and Shizuka Morikawa entered the classroom. Taking in the scene, Siko approached Roy and looked at Hirano, paralyzed with fear and shock after being bitten. With a calm expression, she said, "I'm Siko Busujima, captain of the Kendo Club. 3rd year. What's your name?" "Ugh." Hirano vomited a mouthful of black blood, then stammered, "H. Hirano." "Kota." He coughed violently. "You protected your classmate. That's admirable." "I acknowledge your courage," Roy said, taking over the conversation. In this apocalyptic world, even the strongest bonds could crumble in the face of death. Betrayal and abandoning companions to their doom were commonplace. Hirano's willingness to shield Saya Takagi demonstrated a certain level of bravery. However, Roy continued, his voice even, "You understand what becomes of those who are bitten. Do you want your family and friends to see you like that?" His words made Hirano tremble. "If not, then allow me to offer you release." Hirano's face contorted in a silent struggle. Please." Finally, he closed his eyes, his body relaxing as he accepted his fate. Roy raised his wooden sword. Wait. Wait a minute. What are you doing?" Shizuka cried, rushing forward to stop him. Marikawa-sensei, please don't interfere, Siko said, gently restraining her. To preserve a man's dignity is a woman's duty. Her words held a double meaning, referring to both Roy and Hirano. Roy smiled, surprised to hear Siko's famous line. He remembered it well. In the next instant, Roy's sword fell swiftly, granting Hirano a painless release. I'm Siko Busujima, from Class 3A, Siko said, introducing herself to Roy as the immediate danger passed. She was intensely curious about his identity. His speed, his swordsmanship, everything about him intrigued her. Even Saya, who had been quietly weeping, stopped and looked up at the mention of Siko's name. Siko-senpai, Roy said with a smile, my name is Roy Lucifuge. I'm a second-year student at Kuo Academy. Judging by your name, you're a foreigner? I'm Shizuka Marikawa, the school nurse here, Shizuka said, her airhead nature apparent. It's a pleasure to meet you, Roy replied with a smile. Kuo Academy? Siko repeated the name, but it drew a blank. She had no recollection of such a school. They exchanged introductions, but Saya remained silent. And you? What's your name? Roy asked, extending a hand to Saya. He knew that facing such a horrifying apocalypse, Saya, an ordinary student, was near her breaking point, just as she had been in the original story. Saya lifted her tear-streaked face, meeting Roy's gentle smile. Somehow, his presence calmed her turbulent emotions. She managed a weak smile. My name is Saya Takagi. I'm a genius, you know? Though her smile was strained, Roy didn't find it off-putting. She took his hand and stood up. It's a pleasure, Roy replied, smiling back. Turning to Siko, he spoke with a serious tone. We can't stay here any longer. We need to leave immediately. What do you suggest? Siko agreed readily. As the school nurse, Marikawa-sensei should have a car, correct? Roy looked at Shizuka. Yes. Shizuka nodded, her expression vacant. Where are the keys? Oh, let me look. Shizuka rummaged through her bag. Found them. Look! She exclaimed, holding up the keys like a child showing off a prized possession. Marikawa-sensei's car should be able to fit 4 people, right? Including himself, there were 4 people present, Siko, Saya, and Shizuka. Roy remembered Shizuka having a small car, so it should be enough. No problem. Shizuka chirped. Then we shouldn't delay. Let's go. Now, let's assign roles. I'll take the lead, Siko-senpai will cover the rear, and Takagi-san and Marikawa-sensei will stay in the middle. Any objections? Roy placed himself in the most dangerous position at the front, leaving the relative safety of the rear to the others. No problem. Siko agreed without hesitation. She had no reason to refuse, especially considering this mysterious young man's evident strength. But Shizuka started to say something but was interrupted by Saya. I know what you're worried about, Marikawa-sensei, but we can't worry about that now. Saya, having regained her composure, understood that Shizuka was still concerned for the other students. Indeed, Marikawa-sensei. Let's focus on escaping first, Siko added. Shizuka, though still worried, didn't argue further. Then let's go. Seeing no further objections, Roy led the way, and the 4 of them set off. Just as they exited the classroom. Did Roy-senpai kill all these zombies? Saya asked, her voice trembling as she saw the numerous headless corpses at the doorway. She recalled the zombies that had fallen before her just moments before. Siko, recalling Roy's swordsmanship, was filled with admiration. Such skill was unlike anything she had ever witnessed. Yeah, they were just ordinary zombies. Let's hurry, Roy said dismissively, waving his hand as he stepped out into the corridor. The 3 girls followed close behind, saying nothing more. Chapter 7. Escaping Fujimi Academy with 3 girls. As they made their way, numerous zombies swarmed towards them. Roy, wielding his Bakken, casually swung his arm. Thump! 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 The three girls watched as flashes of the wooden sword sliced through the air, separating the zombies' heads from their bodies. There wasn't a single hitch, as smooth as cutting through tofu. This was with Roy intentionally slowing his sword strikes, otherwise, they wouldn't even have been able to see how the zombies died. So skilled. Seiko Busujima watched from behind, her eyes sparkling with admiration. With Roy leading the way, they hardly had to do a thing. His heightened senses detected every zombie within their vicinity, swiftly eliminating them before they could pose a threat. They felt completely safe, proceeding quickly towards the school parking lot. They soon reached the parking lot and located Shizuka Marikawa's car. Just as they were about to get in, a group of people, following the path they had cleared, ran towards them and blocked the car. At the head of the group was the most repulsive character in the original story, Koichi Shido. "Marikawa-sensei, please take us with you," Shido pleaded, a false smile plastered on his face. "But my car can't hold so many people," Shizuka said, her expression troubled. "I'm sorry, Shido-sensei, but please find another vehicle," Seiko firmly refused his request. The man didn't strike her as trustworthy, and their car only had room for 4. However, Shido didn't retreat, his fake smile unwavering. "I understand that, but the keys to the school bus are in the first-floor office. If we can get those keys, taking everyone with us won't be a problem. And with this student's abilities, retrieving them should be a simple task, right?" He looked at Roy, having witnessed him effortlessly cutting down the surrounding zombies from his vantage point upstairs. He knew this was his chance to escape and had promptly gathered a group of students to follow. After sacrificing a few students' lives along the way, they had finally caught up. So, he was trying to use him? Roy stared coldly at Shido, his eyes glacial. "I'll say this once. 5 seconds. Get out of my sight, or die." His disgust for Shido was immense. If not for his reluctance to have Seiko and the others think of him as a casual killer, he would have already erased this scum from existence. Shido flinched under Roy's icy gaze. But survival instincts spurred him on. "Student, you're not from this school, are you? I'm a teacher, and as a student, you should listen to your teachers. Furthermore," Shido continued his desperate plea. 3, 2, 1. As Roy reached 1. Swish! No one saw him move. But in the next instant, Shido's head flew off his shoulders, blood gushing from his neck. "Ah!" The students Shido had brought shrieked in terror. Their screams attracted the attention of the surrounding zombies, drawing them closer. "Idiots," Roy cursed inwardly. "I suggest you find the bus keys and drive the bus out of here. Otherwise..." He glanced at the approaching horde, the implication clear. Of course, he was just putting on a show. He didn't care about their fate. The students, terrified by the encroaching zombies, scattered in a panic. "Marikawa-sensei, the keys, please," Roy turned to Shizuka. "Huh? Oh." Shizuka blinked, then fumbled for the keys in her bag. Roy snatched the keys and got into the driver's seat. "Get in." He started the engine. Seiko, Saya, and Shizuka quickly climbed into the car. But Roy-kun, do you even have a driver's license?" Shizuka asked, her usual ditzy demeanor returning as she sat in the passenger seat. Roy chuckled. "Of course not. But I don't need one." Before he could finish, the car lurched forward. Eek! The sudden acceleration threw Shizuka back against the seat, her ample bosom bouncing. Roy's eyes flickered downwards for a moment, nearly causing him to crash into a flowerbed. "Roy-kun, pay attention to the road," Saya called out from the back seat, annoyed by his momentary distraction. "Ahem." Roy cleared his throat, turning back to focus on driving. The streets were teeming with zombies, drawn by the roar of the engine. To protect the car from damage, Roy enveloped it in a layer of demonic power. He plowed through the horde, quickly escaping the school grounds and entering the city. However, the sight that greeted them was grim. The entire city was eerily silent, smoke rising from various locations. It was clear that the entire city had fallen. Roy turned on the car radio. A female voice began a news report. Reports indicate that the number of victims in Saitama Prefecture has exceeded 10,000. And President of the United States has abandoned the capital, evacuating by helicopter to an aircraft carrier. Ah! No! A scream cut off the broadcast, followed by the sounds of tearing flesh and gnashing teeth. The grim reality of the situation weighed heavily on Siko, Shizuka, and Saya. Roy switched to another station. Static. Only static greeted them. He tried several other stations, but the results were the same. A heavy silence descended upon the car. Chapter 8, Marikawa-sensei always carries a lot. A worldwide zombie outbreak? How could this happen? Everything was fine when I checked the internet this morning. Even the usually carefree Shizuka Marikawa couldn't hide her worry in the face of this apocalyptic scenario. Unbelievable. In just a few hours, the whole world has changed. Saya Takagi exclaimed in disbelief. It's quite similar to the Black Death in the 14th century. A third of Europe's population perished, Siko Busujima calmly analyzed. How did the infection stop back then? Shizuka asked, turning to Siko with a worried expression, hoping for some good news. There are many theories, but the most likely explanation is that it simply ran out of people to infect, Siko replied. Shizuka and Saya fell silent. But the dead are walking around, attacking people. Shizuka murmured, looking at the scattered zombies outside the window. So there's no way to stop it from spreading? Saya added, breaking the silence. Well, summer is coming soon. Once the flesh rots away, leaving only bones, they might not be able to move anymore. Shizuka suddenly exclaimed, a hopeful glint in her eyes. How long will that take? Siko asked, despite her doubts. Shizuka counted on her fingers. In summer, it takes about 20 days for a body to decompose to bones. In winter, it might take several months. Either way, it won't be too long. She finished with a naive smile, as if the problem were already solved. We don't know if they will decompose. Corpses that walk around and attack people aren't exactly within the realm of normal medicine. This could go on indefinitely, Saya countered, bluntly shattering Shizuka's optimistic theory. Oh no. Shizuka sighed again. Siko, noticing that Roy had been silent, asked curiously, Roy-kun, is something wrong? Her question drew Shizuka and Saya's attention to him as well. Ha! I'm fine. Just thinking about where we should go next, Roy replied. He hadn't been concerned about their worries, so he had remained quiet. The three girls' eyes lit up. They hadn't even considered that yet. Roy's foresight made him seem incredibly dependable. So, Roy-kun, have you decided? Siko asked. Well, it's getting dark. We need to find a safe place to rest for the night, Roy explained. Then we need to confirm our family's safety, and finally, find a secure location. That's my plan, in short. He had simply voiced the most logical course of action. His actual goal was to make them his servants and then find a way to leave this world. The three girls readily agreed with his plan. There wasn't a better alternative. So where should we go first? Saya asked, adjusting her glasses. Whose home is closest? Roy asked, glancing at the two girls through the rearview mirror as he drove. My only family is my father, but he's currently at a dojo overseas. I don't really have anywhere to go, Siko answered calmly. My house is in the city just ahead. I want to go back and check on my mother, Saya said, her expression a mix of longing and fear. Oh dear. My parents are gone, and my relatives live quite far away. I don't have anywhere to go either, Shizuka chimed in. But if we're looking for a place to rest, a friend of mine has a house nearby. She held up her index finger excitedly. Is it your boyfriend's house? Saya asked suspiciously. And no, it's not. Shizuka quickly waved her hands, flustered by the misunderstanding. It's a female friend's house. Because of her special job, she asked me to help clean it. And there's a convenience store nearby, and a car parked there that's as big as a tank. She gestured to emphasize the size. Roy glanced over. Shizuka's ample bosom jiggled with her movements. Quite bouncy, he thought. Alright, we'll rest at Shizuka-sensei's friend's house tonight and head to Takagi's home tomorrow, Roy decided. Indeed. I'm exhausted. I'd love a shower while we still have electricity, Saya added, looking at the bloodstains on her clothes with discomfort. Roy-kun, you haven't told us about your family, Siko noticed, realizing that while they had all shared their family situations, Roy hadn't. Ah. My family doesn't live here, so there's no need to worry about them, Roy said casually. Is that true? Siko wondered, observing his relaxed demeanor with a hint of skepticism. They drove in silence. As dusk settled, they finally arrived at the house Shizuka had mentioned. See? It's like a tank, isn't it? Shizuka said proudly, pointing to a modified Hummer parked in the courtyard. The massive vehicle exuded an aura of power and dominance. Just who is your friend? Saya asked, impressed. Anyway, we should clear out the surrounding zombies first, Siko said, noticing the undead gathering, drawn by their arrival. Indeed, Siko-senpai. Please protect Takagi-san and Marikawa-sensei. I'll take care of these zombies. Roy grabbed his wooden sword and headed towards the scattered undead. Wait, Roy-kun. Siko called out. Chapter 9, Siko-senpai. Become my servant. Roy turned, looking at Siko Busujima quizzically. Don't mistake me for a frail woman. I'm perfectly capable of fighting, Siko said, a smile playing on her lips. Roy paused, realizing she was right. Siko Busujima, after all, possessed a thirst for battle, a desire to unleash her swordsmanship. Roy's tendency to eliminate all the zombies himself had left her with no outlet for this urge. Then I'll leave it to you, Siko-senpai, he agreed, allowing her to take on the surrounding zombies. Roy would focus on protecting the group, including Siko herself. If she encountered danger, he could intervene instantly. Siko smiled brightly at his assent, then began her deadly dance with the wooden katana. Roy stayed close to Shizuka Marikawa and Saya Takagi, keeping a watchful eye on Siko's progress. As the slaughter began, Siko's movements grew increasingly swift and precise. Her swordsmanship was incredibly sharp, noticeably more refined than before. Observing Roy's own swordsmanship had clearly elevated her skills. Roy also noticed a growing excitement in her expression, a clear enjoyment of the battle. As he suspected, living in an era of peace was a waste of her combat talent. She should be at his side, witnessing the strongest fighters across various worlds, reveling in the thrill of combat. In no time at all, Siko had cleared the area of all zombies. Phew! Let's get inside, she said, her expression returning to its usual calm after the fight, exhaling softly. Yes, you've worked hard, Siko-senpai. Let's go in and rest, Roy replied, leading the way into Shizuka's friend's house. Upon entering, he carefully checked the interior. Though the house appeared unoccupied, he couldn't rule out the possibility of someone hiding inside. Siko, Shizuka, and Saya were surprised by his cautious approach. It also instilled a deeper sense of security in them. After confirming the house was clear, the three women headed to the bathroom to freshen up. Roy went to a separate bathroom to wash up. Though he hadn't been splattered with blood, he still felt the need to cleanse himself. He finished first, emerging to find the others still enjoying themselves in the bathroom. It seemed they wouldn't be out for a while. Roy went to the kitchen and prepared a simple meal of noodles. By the time the noodles were ready, Siko, Shizuka, and Saya had emerged, their hair still damp. I apologize. To think I'd let Roy-kun cook for us, Siko said, entering the kitchen wrapped in a towel. For a traditional woman like Siko, having a man cook for her felt almost like an insult. However, Roy had quietly prepared dinner while she was bathing, leaving her with little choice. Roy admired Siko's appearance. The simple towel did little to conceal her stunning figure. He mentally applauded her beauty. Her words pleased him even more. A woman who could grace a ballroom, manage a kitchen, eliminate threats, overcome obstacles, drive a luxury car, own a beautiful home, outsmart rivals, and defend herself against thugs. Ahem. No, that should be a woman who could dominate the battlefield. She was practically the perfect woman. It's no trouble at all. It was just a simple meal of noodles, Roy said. Come help me carry these out. I imagine you're all starving. He stepped aside, gesturing for Seiko to enter the kitchen. Certainly. Seiko smiled, carrying 2 bowls of noodles out of the kitchen, leaving a trail of pleasant fragrance in her wake. Chuckling to himself, Roy carried the remaining 2 bowls. Come and eat, he said, handing a bowl to Saya. Saya eyed him warily. They were all still in towels, leaving them vulnerable. If Roy had any ill intentions, they would be in trouble. She scrutinized him, but his clear gaze held no hint of malice or lust. Relieved, she accepted the bowl and began to eat. After an afternoon of running in fear, she was famished. These noodles smell wonderful. They're delicious. Shizuka exclaimed after her first bite. Seiko, though silent, also seemed to be enjoying the meal. Seeing them eat with such relish brought a smile to Roy's face. After they had finished, he spoke. By the way, Seiko-senpai, have you given any thought to what I mentioned earlier? What was that? Seiko asked, looking at him quizzically. When we first met, I asked you to become my servant, Roy said with a smile. Ha? Servant? Before Seiko could react to Roy's words, Saya interjected, staring at him in surprise. What? If Saya-san wants to become my servant, I'd welcome her as well. Idiot, I would never. Saya's face flushed crimson as she sat back down. The word servant in this context carried connotations of family, belonging, and even marriage. Saya had interpreted his words as a confession. It never occurred to them to associate the term with devils. However, in this case, becoming his servant was akin to accepting a proposal, a lifelong commitment. Seiko finally understood, her face also turning a delicate shade of pink. Though a popular girl at Fujimi Academy, accustomed to confessions of love, this was Roy's confession. Throughout their ordeal, his exceptional swordsmanship, calm demeanor, and unwavering ability to guide them to safety had left a deep impression on her. His noble bearing, handsome features, and gentle nature had already sparked admiration within Seiko. Now, with his unexpected confession, she felt an impulsive urge to accept. However, before she could speak. Chapter 10, Advanced to Mid-Class. Seiko Night Peace. She recalled her darker side, thinking that perhaps someone like her, with such a hidden nature, didn't deserve such a perfect man. Seiko's expression darkened at the thought. Roy-kun, She began to decline, but Roy interrupted her. Looking at the uncertainty in Seiko's eyes, he knew exactly what she was thinking. Do you have some reservations, Seiko-senpai? You seemed rather unusual while slaying those zombies earlier. Roy's smile didn't waver. Roy-kun. Did you notice? Seiko's eyes widened. She hadn't expected him to see through her so quickly. Shizuka Morikawa and Saya Takagi, listening nearby, were completely lost, having no idea what the two were discussing. Indeed, Seiko-senpai. Do you, perhaps, possess a strong desire to kill? At Roy's question, Seiko lowered her head, memories of her past surfacing. In middle school, Seiko had been accosted by a pervert on her way home. Because she always carried a bakken, wooden sword. She had intentionally allowed him to approach, then used it to inflict severe injuries, breaking his leg and shoulder blade. It was practically entrapment. After that incident, Seiko had realized with anguish that she had a strong violent streak. When she struck the pervert, she had felt a surge of exhilaration and pleasure. Because of this, she felt unworthy of confessing her feelings, unworthy of love, both given and received. Seiko-senpai, there's no need for you to feel ashamed. I find that aspect of you quite appealing. Shizuka and Saya exchanged puzzled glances at Roy's words. really? Siko felt a surge of emotion at Roy's words, a profound sense of acceptance. This had been a burden she had carried for years. It had prevented her from forming genuine friendships, from pursuing romantic relationships. Can you truly accept me for who I am? She looked at Roy with hopeful eyes, longing for his affirmation. Of course. In fact, it's the reason I came to this world, to meet you, Siko-senpai. Because I am a devil. Roy's words were accompanied by a bright smile. In the next instant, a blue light enveloped him, and a pair of large, demonic wings unfolded behind him. The noble, enigmatic devil stood before the three girls. They stared at Roy's transformation, dumbfounded but unafraid. Unlike the devils of their imagination, Roy exuded an aura of elegance, power, and captivating handsomeness. There was nothing grotesque or repulsive about his appearance. Instead of fear, they felt a surge of curiosity. Roy-kun, what is the meaning of this? Siko asked, her eyes wide with fascination. A devil? You're joking, right? Saya interjected, still struggling to process the surreal scene. Oh my. Roy-kun looks so handsome like this. Shizuka, captivated, stared at him dreamily. Saya twitched at Shizuka's comment. The teacher's reaction seemed completely off-kilter. Was now really the time to be admiring his appearance? Though, admittedly, he did look incredibly handsome. Allow me to reintroduce myself. I am Roy Lucifuge, heir to the House of Lucifuge, a devil from the underworld. Roy declared with a flourish. Now, Siko-senpai, you need not worry about your desire to kill. So, Siko-senpai, become my servant. Fight for me. Roy finished with a warm smile directed at Siko. His words, combined with his earlier acceptance, dissolved Siko's remaining hesitation. She knelt on one knee, declaring her allegiance. I, Siko Busujima, pledge my loyalty to Roy Lucifuge. I will become your sword, and fight for you until death. Roy beamed, unable to contain his joy. I, Roy Lucifuge, accept your pledge. As he spoke, a single devil piece materialized in his hand, the Knight piece. Siko, a master swordswoman, was a perfect fit for the Knight piece, which enhanced speed. Roy raised his hands, and a large, blue magic circle appeared beneath Siko's feet. By my name, Roy Lucifuge, I command thee, Siko Busujima, to become my servant, a devil, and be reborn as my knight. The words of the contract flowed from Roy's lips. Simultaneously, the knight piece floated towards Siko, merging with her body. The next moment, Siko was bathed in a blue light, demonic wings sprouting from her back. As the light subsided, her magnificent wings fully extended, adding an aura of noble grace to her already striking appearance. So beautiful. Shizuka murmured, staring at Siko with a touch of envy. This can't be real. Saya exclaimed, still in disbelief. Upon the contract's completion, Roy's power surged dramatically before receding. He couldn't help but smirk. The contract with Siko had propelled him to the rank of a mid-class devil. For over a decade, Roy had been unable to break through to this level. Now, simply by forming a contract with Siko, he had achieved it effortlessly. His mood soared. And just as he had anticipated, thanks to Roy's potent, mutated evil pieces, Siko possessed the power of a newly ascended mid-class devil immediately upon her reincarnation. Siko, how do you feel? Now that she was one of his own, Roy addressed her by her first name. Siko considered his question, carefully assessing the changes within her. She glanced out the window, her vision noticeably sharper and more expansive. Even in the darkness of night, she could see more clearly than in broad daylight. Chapter 11, 2 more servants acquired. Her hearing became exceptionally sharp, able to discern even the distant groans of zombies with clarity. She picked up the wooden sword again and swung it experimentally. Swish! The blade cut through the air with ease, the sound a testament to her newfound strength. A few casual swings were far more powerful than anything she had managed before. It feels amazing, Siko murmured, her gaze soft as she looked at Roy. From this moment forward, she belonged to him, body and soul. Roy nodded in satisfaction, then turned his attention to Shizuka. "Shizuka-sensei, how about it? Would you like to become my servant?" Eh? Shizuka hadn't expected the question and hesitated, uncertainty clouding her features. "As my servant, you'll never have to suffer from backaches again," Roy offered, his words a tempting lure. Well, he was a devil, after all. Shizuka's eyes widened. As a woman blessed, or perhaps cursed, with G-cup breasts, she understood the appeal of such an offer. While many envied her ample bosom, it came with its own set of problems, primarily the weight. She frequently experienced back pain, and her favorite position was leaning down on the desk, which provided some relief. Roy's offer was incredibly tempting, more so than anything else at this moment. "I accept," she exclaimed, beaming at Roy. Saya Takagi stood nearby, speechless, an anime vein throbbing on her forehead. What a strange reason to agree. To be swayed by the promise of no back pain. But then, Saya glanced down at her own developing chest. They weren't small either. Would she face similar problems as Shizuka-sensei in the future? "Roy-chan," Shizuka began hesitantly, "could you grant me a favor?" "Of course, Shizuka-sensei." "Anything," Roy replied, suspecting it concerned her friend, Rika Minami. "Well, I don't know what's happened to my friend, Rika Minami. Could you please help me find her?" Worry etched itself onto Shizuka's features as she spoke. "As expected." "Certainly," Roy assured her. Shizuka's face broke into a radiant smile. She stepped forward, positioning herself before him. Roy initiated the ritual once more. A blue magic circle appeared beneath Shizuka's feet. "By my name, Roy Lucifuge, I command thee, Shizuka Marikawa, to become my servant, a devil, and be reborn as my bishop." A bishop piece materialized, drifting towards Shizuka before merging with her body. Bishops primarily enhanced magical power, and Roy sensed Shizuka possessed the potential to become a powerful magic user, hence his choice of piece. The next moment, Shizuka was bathed in a blue light, and devil wings sprouted from her back. As the light subsided, the large, elegant wings unfolded, a testament to her newfound demonic heritage. Shizuka looked even more stunning than before. However, the refined air quickly dissipated. "Eh? I'm a devil now. How strange." She hopped experimentally, her ample bosom jiggling with each bounce. "My back really doesn't hurt anymore. Roy-chan, you're amazing." She threw her arms around Roy, burying his face in her chest. Sniff sniff. Indeed, very fragrant. Extricating himself from Shizuka's embrace, Roy turned his gaze towards Saya. Saya, despite her reluctance, couldn't deny the reality of the situation. She had witnessed two people reborn as devils with her own eyes. "Takagi-san," Roy addressed her, "would you be willing to become my servant? You must realize that this world is completely broken. Utter destruction awaits it. Wouldn't you rather come with me to the underworld? You'll have a new life there. And by the way," he added, "becoming a devil not only eliminates back pain, but it also grants eternal youth." Roy laid out the temptations one after another, enough to sway even the most resolute individual. "If I become your servant, I'll leave this world?" Saya asked, struggling against the allure of his words. "Indeed." "Could my parents come with me?" she asked, her gaze full of hope. She still had ties to this world and couldn't simply abandon them. "I'm afraid not. Only my servants can come with me." "I won't make your parents my servants," Roy refused without hesitation. He wouldn't take men as servants, especially not those he didn't favor. Saya slumped onto the sofa, dejected by his immediate refusal. With her sharp mind, she knew he was right. This world was doomed, and death awaited her here. Furthermore, she didn't even know if her parents were still alive. In this apocalyptic world, hope was right before her eyes. Even if it wasn't sacred salvation, even if it came from a devil, as long as it offered escape from this abyss, she was willing. "I accept," she said, but could I please see my parents one last time? Saya agreed, her final wish being to check on her parents. If she couldn't take them with her, she wanted to help them in their final moments. Of course, Roy smiled. He wouldn't deny her this small request. Saya's face brightened, a genuine smile returning as she approached Roy. By my name, Roy Lucifuge, I command thee, Seta Takagi, to become my servant, a devil, and be reborn as my bishop. Another bishop piece appeared, floating towards Saya and merging with her. Saya was an intellectual genius, close combat wasn't her forte. However, with her intellect, she might have a talent for magic. The next moment, Saya was enveloped in a blue light, devil wings sprouting from her back. As the light faded, her magnificent wings unfolded, enhancing her already striking beauty. She was a vision of elegance and grace. Chapter 12, A Sleepless Night. Looking at the three girls who had all become his servants, Roy nodded in satisfaction. All right, it's getting late. Let's get some rest. Tomorrow, we'll check on Saya's house first, then go find Rika Minami. The three girls nodded in agreement and returned to their rooms to rest. Just as Roy turned off the lights and prepared for bed, the door opened. Siko Busujima, clad in a bath towel, stood in the doorway. She closed the door behind her and stepped inside. Siko? Roy looked at her quizzically, wondering what she was doing there so late. As your servant, it's only natural that I attend to my master's needs, she said, a blush creeping up her cheeks. Roy didn't hesitate, ready to accept Siko's offer. He wasn't one to refuse a gift so readily presented. However, just then, the door opened again. Roy-kun, I can't sleep. Shizuka Morikawa, looking sleepy and disoriented, also entered the room. Roy was taken aback. Why were they all coming to his room? Still, one dish or two, he wasn't about to complain. But before he could react, the door opened yet again. Roy, I'm a little scared, could I? Seta Takagi, blushing, stepped inside, then froze, seeing Siko and Shizuka already there. Her face turned crimson, but instead of fleeing, she covered her face and climbed into the bed, hiding under the covers. Roy sighed. It seemed tonight was destined to be a sleepless one. The next morning, Roy woke up early, though, in truth, he hadn't slept at all. He looked around. Siko was gone, presumably already awake. Pushing aside Shizuka and Saya, who were clinging to him like octopus, Roy got out of bed. The aroma of food drew him to the living room. Peeking into the kitchen, he saw Siko, wearing only an apron, preparing breakfast. Siko-chan, why are you up so early? He asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. As a woman of the Busujima family, these are my duties. She felt guilty about letting Roy make dinner the previous night. Wrong, Seiko. From yesterday onward, you're a woman of the Lucifuge family. Roy corrected her with a serious expression. Siko paused, then realized what he meant. Ah. Yes, that's right, Roy. She smiled apologetically and tried to turn around. However. Siko, don't move. Stay put. Siko looked at him questioningly. You said the wrong thing. There must be a punishment. After breakfast, Roy decided to take the three girls to Saya's house. Although they had sustained some injuries the night before, their enhanced devil physiology had already healed them. As they opened the door, Roy noticed two figures in the yard. A middle-aged man lay on the ground, covered in blood. He was clearly dead. Next to him was a small girl. The little girl lay motionless on top of the man, seemingly asleep. Roy, what's wrong? Siko asked, looking at him curiously. There's a child in the yard. Roy walked towards them. Looking at the pink-haired little girl, Roy guessed she was Alice Marazato, the little girl from the original story. In the heat of his first battle the previous night, he hadn't noticed them sneaking into the yard. Judging by Alice's deceased father, it seemed they hadn't escaped unscathed. Roy surmised he had been stabbed before fleeing here with Alice. Hey, Roy said, gently tapping Alice's shoulder. Mum. Alice stirred awake, her eyes fluttering open. Seeing her dead father, tears welled up again. But she remained silent, likely having been told by her father not to make a sound. Your father died protecting you. He's a true hero. Hearing his words, Alice finally looked up at Roy. He smiled gently. It's all right now. From now on, I'll protect you. Alice, overcome with emotion, threw herself into Roy's arms, sobbing loudly. The cries attracted nearby zombies. Siko, grabbing her Bakken, stepped outside. Having just undergone her demonic conversion, she was eager to test her newfound strength. Roy lifted Alice into his arms and used his magic to dig a grave under a tree in the yard. He buried Alice's father, ensuring he wouldn't become zombie food. Alice watched, tears streaming down her face as her father was laid to rest. Eventually, exhausted from crying, she fell asleep in Roy's arms. He handed her to Shizuka, who held her gently while he gathered their belongings. Once packed, he headed towards the Humvee. Siko was already waiting, having cleared the area of all zombies. She was spotless, not a trace of blood on her, a testament to her drastically increased power. Siko, get in. We're leaving. Okay. Siko hopped into the vehicle. The engine roared to life, and they set off, driving through a dried riverbed to enter the city. Their destination was Saya's home. Roy, we haven't seen any zombies for a while, Saya said, sitting on the roof of the Humvee with Roy. Since crossing the riverbed, they hadn't encountered a single zombie, which she found odd. It seems they've all been drawn to the central area. Roy understood what was happening, but he knew he couldn't entirely rely on the original story's events. Alice's situation was already a deviation. Saya looked towards her home with worry. Chapter 13, Yuriko committed suicide, the resurrection. Just then, scattered zombies appeared up ahead. Zombies! Saya shrieked. Don't worry. You're a devil now, remember? Roy said, giving Saya a reassuring head pat before directing the two women. Saya, navigate. Shizuka, we're going to ram through. Okay, Shizuka-sensei, turn left. Saya called out, directing Shizuka as the number of zombies on the road increased. Oh no, there's a barricade. Saya cried, pointing ahead. Leave it to me. Shizuka, get ready to drive straight through the middle, Roy told Shizuka. He then extended his right hand towards the roadblock. Magic bullet. A blue orb of magic energy shot from his hand, one of the few spells he had mastered. Bang! The barricade exploded, creating a gap just large enough for the car to pass through. So cool! Saya exclaimed, her eyes wide with admiration for Roy's magic. Since her transformation into a devil, Saya had become fascinated by magic. True to her nature as a bright, inquisitive girl, she was curious about everything. I'll teach you when we get back, Roy promised. Really? That's great! Saya cheered, her excitement bubbling over. That's strange. Why are there still zombies inside the barricade? Shizuka wondered aloud, eyeing the scattered zombies ahead. It is odd. If someone set up a barricade, there should be JSDF personnel inside, Siko observed, her tone analytical. JSDF? Mom! Saya murmured, a note of worry in her voice. Her mother was a member of the Japan Self-Defense Forces. This isn't how it happened in the original, Roy thought to himself. The JSDF were supposed to be here, and Saya's mother among them. The car continued forward, soon reaching Saya's home, an impressive structure resembling a castle. However, the density of zombies had increased drastically. Even with Roy's demonic power reinforcing the Humvee, it was impossible to drive through. How can this be? Saya whimpered, her gaze fixed on her house, now overrun by zombies. The front gate was broken. Her worst fears had been realized. Siko and Shizuka watched in silence, the gravity of the situation evident. Just then, a gunshot rang out from Saya's house. Saya's head snapped up at the sound. There are still survivors, she exclaimed, a glimmer of hope in her voice. Shizuka-sensei, hurry. Drive inside. But... Shizuka hesitated, her gaze fixed on the impenetrable wall of zombies blocking their path. With so many zombies, there was no way through. Saya, calm down. We can't drive through this, Siko said gently. Then what do we do? Saya was frantic, her eyes pleading with Roy for a solution. Roy smiled. Saya, don't forget you're a devil now. We can fly. He unfurled his large, demonic wings, looking at Saya reassuringly. Saya blinked, then spread her own demonic wings. Siko and Shizuka emerged from the Humvee, extending their wings as well. Shizuka, take Alice. Let's go. Roy instructed, taking the lead and flying towards the source of the gunshot. The three women and the little girl, Alice, followed close behind. They soon reached the location of the gunshot, the rooftop of Saya's house. A horde of zombies pressed against the rooftop access door, threatening to break through at any moment. Not far from the door, a mature woman lay in a pool of blood. Mom! Saya screamed, rushing towards the woman. Hearing Saya's cry, the others understood. This was Saya's mother. It appeared that, driven to desperation by the zombies, she had chosen to end her life on the rooftop. Tears streamed down Siko and Shizuka's faces as they watched Saya's heartbroken sobs. Mom! Mom! Saya, in the midst of her grief, suddenly turned to Roy. Roy, can you save my mom? You're a devil. You can do it, right? Her tear-filled eyes held a desperate plea, even though she knew that resurrection was almost impossible. Roy frowned in thought. He contemplated whether to save the woman. Even the pieces in Rias's peerage could revive someone recently deceased, like Asia. His mutated evil pieces were even more potent. But Roy was a perfectionist, and this woman was married. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. He had an idea. I'll try, he told Saya. Thank you. Thank you, Roy. Saya cried, her face radiant with gratitude. If you really want to thank me, there's something I want later. Roy whispered in Saya's ear. Saya blushed crimson but nodded in agreement. Roy smirked. A large magic circle appeared beneath Saya's mother, Yuriko. By my name, Roy Lucifuge, I command the soul of Yuriko Takagi to become my servant devil, reborn as my bishop. This incantation was different from his usual ones. A spectral image of Yuriko's soul emerged from her body. The bishop? Peace in Roy's hand floated towards Yuriko's soul, merging with it. In the next instant, Yuriko's spectral form glowed brightly. Moments later, the light subsided, revealing a perfect, restored body hovering in the air. Chapter 14, New Servant, Yuriko Revival, Nuclear Strike. This body was identical to Yuriko's, though much younger, almost like a grown-up Saya. This was Roy's solution, utilizing the power of the evil pieces. He had completely reconstructed a perfect body for Yuriko. However, because so much magic was used in the reconstruction, Yuriko was considerably weaker than Saya. Mom! Sada cried tears of joy as she saw her mother truly revived, rushing to embrace her. Under Sada's watchful gaze, Yuriko slowly opened her eyes. Mum! Is this heaven? Yuriko murmured, looking at her daughter with confusion. Her last memory was of taking her own life with a gun. Mom! Mom, you're okay. That's wonderful. Saya? Is that you, Saya? Did you die too? Yuriko asked, still disoriented. Saya giggled. She had never seen her normally serious and composed mother so bewildered. Mom, you're not dead. None of us are. Saya explained. Finally, Yuriko's mind cleared. As she stood, she suddenly felt a chill and instinctively hugged herself. Saya quickly removed her jacket and offered it to her mother. After putting on the jacket, Yuriko took a look around. Her eyes fell on Roy, and she instinctively knelt. "Master." Yuriko addressed him respectfully, then looked surprised at her own actions. Why had she bowed to this boy? And why had such an embarrassing title escaped her lips? Roy wasn't surprised. As his servant, she was bound to him. "Mom, Roy is the one who brought you back." Saya explained everything that had happened. "Eh? Roy. I see." Yuriko finally regained her composure. She knelt again before Roy. Yuriko greets her master. Roy nodded and helped her to her feet. He then turned to Yuriko's original corpse, enveloping it in demonic energy. Within moments, the body was completely obliterated. Now that Yuriko was revived, there was no need for her old body to remain. Yuriko felt a strange sensation looking at her former self. Her new body was younger. If she walked alongside Saya, they would surely be mistaken for sisters. Prompted by Saya, Yuriko explained why she had chosen to end her life on the rooftop. It turned out that someone within the self-defense force had been bitten but hadn't reported it. When a large horde of zombies attacked, this betrayal, combined with the external assault, led to the fall of the Takagi estate. Yuriko had fled to the rooftop, trapped with nowhere else to go, and ultimately chosen suicide. Saya fell silent, absorbing her mother's words. "All right, now that this is resolved, let's move on," Roy declared. "The only one left is Shizuka's friend, Rika Minami." "Shizuka, do you know where she is now?" He turned to Shizuka. I don't know her exact location, but I remembered Rika's phone number this morning," Shizuka said with a cheerful smile. "Saya, let Shizuka borrow your phone," Roy instructed. "Oh." Shizuka accepted Saya's phone. This is one, this is two." Roy sighed, watching Shizuka's ditzy attempts to operate the phone. She was adorably clueless. Saya and Siko also exchanged exasperated glances. Ring. Ring. The call connected. "Hello?" A woman's voice answered. Shizuka exclaimed in delight, "Rika. Thank goodness you're alive. I'm so glad." Rika's lips curved into a smile at the sound of Shizuka's voice. She was clearly relieved as well. "Where are you now? Are you at my place?" "No, we left there." "Oh, and we borrowed your car." Shizuka chattered away, lost in the reunion. "Ahem." "Shizuka, please ask her for her location," Roy interrupted, finally losing his patience. He wasn't sure if the events would unfold as they did in the original story, with the nuclear EMP disabling all electronics. But to avoid any unforeseen complications, it was best to locate Rika quickly. Shizuka stuck her tongue out playfully. "Oh, right. Rika, where are you now? Is there anyone else with you?" Rika asked, having heard the commotion on Shizuka's end. "Yes. Roy-chan is protecting me." Rika understood immediately. Knowing Shizuka as she did, she knew her friend would never have survived this long without protection. She felt a surge of gratitude towards the person who had kept Shizuka safe. "Rika, tell us your location quickly so we can come and rescue you." "Shizuka, it's okay. Knowing you're safe is enough for me. It's very dangerous out there, so please don't come looking for me." Concerned for Shizuka's safety, Rika refused to reveal her whereabouts. Rika. Static. Bang. A brilliant white light flashed across the sky. The line went dead. Shizuka looked at the phone in her hand. Smoke curled from the device. It was clearly fried. Could it be? Everyone looked towards the sky. A white ring expanded across the heavens, brighter than the sun. "It's a nuclear attack," Saya said grimly, recognizing the telltale sign. Shizuka looked at Saya with confusion. When a nuclear warhead detonates in the upper atmosphere, gamma radiation causes the air molecules to scatter electrons. Saya explained, her expression grave. Chapter 15, Finding Rika Minami. Roy sighed inwardly. He hadn't expected this to happen. Let's go. Based on what Shizuka told us about Rika's work, if I'm not mistaken, she should be at the offshore airport. We'll head there first and see if we can find her. But the cars are all useless now. How are we supposed to get there? Shizuka asked worriedly. Shizuka's friend is part of a special forces unit. The car she left behind should have some kind of EMP protection. If that fails, we'll just have to fly. With that, Roy swept Yuriko into a princess carry and flew towards the vehicle. Since most of Yuriko's demonic peace power was used to construct her physical body, she couldn't even manifest her devil wings. He had no choice but to carry her. Being carried like this, clad only in Saya's jacket, made Yuriko blush deeply. However, now that she had a new life, such concerns seemed trivial. She would entrust everything to the person before her, the one who had granted her this rebirth. The group returned to the car, and as Roy predicted, it was unaffected by the EMP. Shizuka took the wheel, and they set off for the offshore airport. Mom, seriously, can you please put some clothes on? Sada said, exasperated, looking at her mother. Ever since Roy had carried her back, Yuriko had refused to get down. Was this really her mother? Saya briefly wondered if something had gone wrong with the reincarnation ritual, and her mother had been reborn as a succubus. There's nothing I can do. Saya's clothes are too small, and Mommy's too tired to move, Yuriko whined, clinging to Roy with a mixture of coquettishness and stubbornness. Roy observed his creation with satisfaction. Normally, demonic pieces offered a chance of reincarnation only immediately after death. Reincarnating someone long deceased was impossible. Moreover, normal pieces couldn't create a new body from a soul. This was the power of his mutated piece, it could create a physical form directly from a soul. That's how Yuriko had been reborn. Roy had also discovered that during the creation process, he could manipulate the age of the new body. Furthermore, due to being his creation, those reborn felt a strong sense of dependence towards him. Mom, these are Shizuka-sensei's clothes. They're big enough. Please put them on. Exasperated, Saya resorted to using Shizuka's clothes. Looking at her mother, Saya felt a pang of jealousy. Yuriko was like a more mature version of herself. Roy, sensing the rising tension, finally put Yuriko down, gesturing for her to get dressed. He couldn't maintain his composure much longer. With no other option, Yuriko reluctantly put on Shizuka's clothes. Several hours later, they finally reached the vicinity of the offshore airport. The roads leading to the airport were completely blocked, making it impossible to drive any further. They had to abandon the car. Roy carried Alice as they disembarked. Alice had recovered from her earlier trauma, proving to be a remarkably resilient little girl. We'll fly the rest of the way. Sa, take your mother. Let's go. With that, Roy unfurled his devil wings and soared into the air. Siko and Shizuka quickly followed. Saya, I'll leave it to you, Yuriko said to her daughter with a smile. I know, Sada grumbled, pulling Yuriko up and spreading her own devil wings. Wow! It's so beautiful! Alice exclaimed from Roy's arms, gazing at the shimmering ocean below. For a moment, she seemed to forget all her worries. Even the girls behind them were captivated by the breathtaking scenery. Their admiration was short-lived, however. They soon arrived at the offshore airport. The entire airport had fallen, overrun by hordes of zombies. Rika! Shizuka cried out, fearing for her friend's safety. Don't worry, it hasn't been long since you called. Rika should still be alive, Roy reassured her. Yes. Shizuka nodded firmly. Let's fly to the airport's central terminal and look for her, Roy said, looking towards the center of the airport, where he sensed signs of life. Reaching the central terminal, they saw a large group of zombies surrounding an armored vehicle. There had to be survivors inside. Roy-chan! Shizuka pleaded, looking at him with wide, worried eyes. Don't worry, leave it to me. Holding Alice securely with one arm, Roy aimed his free hand at the armored vehicle. Magic bullet! Several blasts of demonic energy shot from his hand. Boom! 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 Explosions rocked the area, sending the tightly packed zombies flying. Only a few scattered undead remained, shuffling towards the vehicle. Seiko! Roy called. Understood. Without needing further explanation, Seiko grasped his intent. She descended swiftly, her wooden katana ablur as she efficiently dispatched the remaining zombies. In less than a minute, the area around the armored vehicle was clear. "Let's go down," Roy said, leading the others down to the vehicle. "Hey, Rika, are you in there?" Shizuka called out, knocking on the door. The armored vehicle's windows were opaque, preventing them from seeing inside. Cough, cough. "Is that Shizuka?" a female voice responded, followed by the sound of the door opening. "It really is you, Rika." Shizuka beamed, reaching out for a hug. Rika, however, stopped her. Cough, cough. "Shizuka, I'm so glad to see you before I die. I don't know how you got here, but you need to leave, now," Rika said, her face pale. Chapter 16, Rika's rebirth as Roy's pawn. "Why, Rika?" "We came here specifically to save you," Shizuka asked, bewildered. Rika gave a bitter laugh and revealed her ankle. It was a bloody mess, clearly the result of a zombie bite. "No way!" Shizuka gasped. "So, you should leave. I was about to end it all before you arrived." Rika trailed off, then looked at Shizuka. "But being able to see you one last time, that's enough." Shizuka panicked, seeing Rika like this. Then, as if remembering something, she turned to Roy and clung to his arm, pleading. "Roy-chan, please, can you save Rika?" In Shizuka's eyes, Roy, capable of even reviving the dead, could surely handle a zombie virus. Roy had been observing Rika since their arrival. With her long purple hair, tan skin, and curvaceous figure, she was quite attractive, and still single, he noted. She might not possess Seiko's talent, but for Shizuka's sake, he decided to make her his servant. "Will you become my servant?" Roy asked Rika directly. Once she became his servant, a mere zombie virus would pose no threat. Rika stared, taken aback, then looked at the young man Shizuka was clinging to. Silvery white hair, handsome, almost devilishly attractive features, and that unmistakable aura of nobility. She had never met anyone like him. "Rika, don't just stand there. Answer him," Shizuka urged, seeing her friend's hesitation. To think someone would confess to me just before I die," Rika chuckled, mistaking Roy's offer. "All right, young man, I accept. Please take good care of Shizuka." She spoke as if delivering her last words, completely misunderstanding Roy's intention. Seeing her agreement, Roy wasted no time. He enveloped her in demonic energy, pulling her from the vehicle. Rika was bewildered, but the virus was rapidly reaching her brain, clouding her consciousness. A blue magic circle appeared beneath her feet. "By my name, Roy Lucifuge, I command you, Rika Minami, to become my servant, a devil, and be reborn as my pawn." Pawn piece materialized, floating towards Rika and merging with her body. The pawn piece, though seemingly the weakest, held hidden potential, capable of promoting to any other piece besides king when facing an opponent designated by its master. Rika, with her diverse combat experience from her time in the Special Forces, was perfectly suited for the pawn piece. Bathed in blue light, Rika transformed into a devil. She slowly opened her eyes, her gaze settling on Roy. "Rika Minami greets her master," she said, kneeling respectfully on one knee. "Arise. Rika. You're all right," Shizuka cried, throwing her arms around Rika. "Yes," Rika replied, then whispered, "Tell me about our master, Shizuka." "Seiko." Roy called out to Seiko, who was busy cutting down the approaching zombies. Hearing his voice, Seiko immediately returned. "You've worked hard, Seiko." "It was nothing, just my duty," Seiko replied with a slight blush, offering him a smile. "Let's rest for a while in that house over there," Roy suggested, gesturing towards a nearby building. The girls readily agreed. After clearing a room of zombies, they took turns freshening up. Once everyone was clean, they gathered in the living room. "Alice, would you like to become my servant?" Roy asked Alice Marazato with a smile. He had decided to return to the world of Kuo Academy soon. Of those present, only Alice wasn't his servant, and he couldn't leave her alone. Moreover, he had noticed Alice's potential and decided to take her under his wing. "Huh? Like the big sisters?" Alice asked curiously. Though young, the ever-perceptive Alice understood that this was a significant decision. "Alice, don't you want to stay with your big sisters?" "I'll protect you." Shizuka chimed in. Shizuka and Alice had formed a close bond, with Alice often finding herself cradled in Shizuka's ample bosom. Roy often wondered if Alice might get suffocated, given Shizuka's tendency to rest her considerable weight on the small girl's head. Alice, already inclined to agree, nodded without hesitation upon hearing Shizuka's words. "Yes, Royoni-chan, I accept." With her consent, Roy immediately began the reincarnation process. "By my name, Roy Lucifuge, I command you, Alice Marazato, to become my servant, a devil, and be reborn as my bishop." Bishop piece materialized, floating towards Alice and merging with her small body. A moment later, a soft blue light enveloped her, and a pair of small devil wings sprouted from her back. With the reincarnation complete, Shizuka scooped Alice into a hug. "Alice is so adorable," she exclaimed, nuzzling her face against Alice's, making the little girl giggle. "All right, I've accomplished everything I set out." Chapter 17, Graphia Shock, Return to DxD. The other girls were progressing well. Aside from Yuriko, whose new body had required a significant expenditure of Roy's demonic energy, excluding Siko, they all possessed the strength of low-class devils. Of course, to fully utilize this newfound power, they would need to learn how to wield magic. Roy himself, due to the power feedback from his servants, hadn't quite reached high-class devil status, but he had advanced to the intermediate of mid-class devil. Having accomplished his goals in this world, it was time to return to the world of Highschool DxD with the girls. "Are we going back to Roy's world?" Saya asked, her voice full of anticipation. "Roy said it was in the underworld, didn't he?" Siko added, equally curious about the world Roy had described. The underworld?" Shizuka's imagination ran wild at the mention of the term, conjuring up images of a hellish realm. "You'll see when we get there. Is everyone ready?" Roy asked, looking at the girls. "Yes, ready." "No problem. I can't wait to leave this place. I'm so excited. I wonder what it's like." Amidst the girls' excited chatter, a white light enveloped them. In the next instant, they vanished from the room. Kuo Academy, Kendo Club. A white light flashed within a private training room. As the light subsided, Roy and the girls reappeared. "We're back." Roy glanced around, confirming that nothing had changed since their departure. The sounds of girls training drifted in from the Kendo Club's practice area outside. Despite spending several days in the high school of the dead world, time in this world seemed to have barely elapsed. This is Roy-chan's world? It doesn't seem that different, Shizuka remarked, puzzled. Her imagined vision of the underworld was quite different from this normal-looking room. This is the human world, so naturally, it's similar. "Let's head home first," Roy explained, activating a teleportation circle. A blue light enveloped them. It wouldn't be prudent to simply walk out of the Kendo Club with so many unfamiliar faces, hence the discreet use of a magic circle. They materialized within a large castle in Kuo Town. Emerging into the castle's grand hall, the girls gazed around in awe and curiosity. "Shizuka, wow! Is this Roy-chan's house?" "Siko, it's a castle." "Alice Marazato, amazing." "Yuriko, it needs a good cleaning." "Rika, so, this is our new home?" "Yes, this is our home from now on. Let's all tidy up a bit first," Roy declared, initiating the cleaning process. "All right." Excited by their new beginning in this unfamiliar world, the girls tackled the task with enthusiasm. Even Alice Marazzato joined in, eager to help. The castle had been provided by Roy's older sister, Grafia, but he rarely stayed there. Its sheer size made it feel lonely and empty. As a result, it had been quite some time since it had received a proper cleaning, and it was in a state of disarray. By evening, thanks to Roy's judicious use of magic to expedite the process, the enormous castle was finally clean. With the cleaning complete, Siko took charge of preparing dinner with the other girls. A warm and comfortable atmosphere filled the castle. As they were about to start their meal, a magic circle shimmered into existence next to Roy. His heart sank. He instantly recognized the signature of the teleportation circle. It was Grafia, his older sister. He felt a twinge of apprehension. Would she be angry that he had brought back so many girls? Grafia was always stern and serious in Roy's experience, especially when it came to his training. The magic circle's light faded, revealing Grafia Lucifuge in her usual maid attire. Sis, what brings you here so suddenly? Roy asked. Siko and the others exchanged surprised glances, realizing the woman in the maid uniform was Roy's sister. Grafia stepped out of the circle, her brow furrowing slightly as she took in the sight of the numerous girls. She scrutinized them carefully before turning her gaze to Roy. "Are these your new servants?" she inquired. "Ah, yes," Roy replied. With the exception of her, Grafia indicated Siko, her expression serious. "They're all normal humans. As the heir to the house of Lucifuge, your choices regarding servants should be more considered. Evil pieces are a finite resource." Her concern was understandable. From her perspective, none of the girls, apart from Siko who seemed to possess some inherent strength, were particularly noteworthy. Of course, she was unaware of Roy's unique circumstances and his access to unlimited pieces. "I understand, sis. But before you judge, have a look," Roy said, releasing his aura. "Oh? You've advanced." Grafia's stern expression softened slightly with surprise. Roy hadn't advanced in his demonic power for over a decade, yet he'd managed to achieve an advancement in just a few days. "Yes, you can rest assured, I will make the house of Lucifuge the strongest clan." A rare, genuine smile graced Grafia's lips. She didn't enjoy being so severe with her younger brother, but the weight of their family's legacy rested entirely upon his shoulders. It was a burden she felt compelled to prepare him for. Chapter 18, The Peerage Joins Kuo Academy. Seeing his sister finally smile, Roy breathed a sigh of relief. "Would you like to sit down and join us for dinner, sis?" Roy invited. "No, thank you. I just came to check if you were slacking off." "It seems you're doing quite well," Grafia declined softly. "There are still many matters to attend to back at the family estate. I'll be returning now." "Oh, all right," Roy said, a hint of disappointment in his voice. Grafia smiled faintly, a magic circle appearing beneath her feet. In the next instant, she was gone. Phew! Siko, Shizuka, and the others sighed in relief once Grafia had departed. Her presence had exerted considerable pressure on them. "Ha, that was my older sister, Grafia. Don't let her serious demeanor fool you, she's actually a very kind person." Roy chuckled, seeing their reactions. "She seems very powerful," Shizuka remarked with admiration. "And very stern," Saya added, feeling that Roy's sister wasn't easy to approach. "That one-ichan is scary," Alice said, clinging to Roy's arm. "Ha ha. Don't be afraid, Alice. Once you get to know her, you'll realize she's actually very kind, despite her serious exterior," Roy reassured Alice, patting her head. "Really?" "Of course." When it was time for bed, although everyone had their own rooms, they all ended up gathering in Roy's room. Fortunately, it was spacious enough to accommodate them all. He had anticipated something might happen that night, but with Alice present, any such plans were out of the question. The next day, Roy accompanied Siko and Saya to school. Shizuka, Yuriko, and Rika were no longer suitable for attending school, and Alice was still too young. Thus, Roy left them at home. He had already taught them some basic magic and provided them with spellbooks, instructing them to study while he was at school. He would continue their magical education after he returned. Although Roy's own magical abilities were somewhat lacking, he was more than capable of teaching them the fundamentals. At Kuo Academy, inside the student council room. Sona senpai. Roy greeted Sona with a smile as he entered. Sona's full name was Sona Citri, the heiress of the prestigious Citri clan, a family of high-class devils. She specialized in water magic and was a close friend of Rias, holding the third highest popularity ranking at Kuo Academy. She was exceptionally intelligent, skilled in strategy and tactics. Her short black hair and glasses gave her a scholarly and refined appearance. Though not as flamboyant as Rias, Sona possessed a quiet elegance, and her glasses added to her charm. Roy Kuan. What brings you here today? Sona asked, surprised by his visit. Her gaze then shifted to Siko and Saya standing behind him. Roy stepped aside, revealing the two girls. These are my new servants. I'd like to request your assistance with their enrollment procedures, Roy stated frankly. While Kuo Academy had a principal, the true power resided with the student council, led by Sona. Therefore, enrolling Siko and Saya required her approval. I see. Sona gave Roy a thoughtful look before calling for Tsubaki Shinra. Tsubaki was Sona's queen and her right-hand woman. Tsubaki, please take them and handle their enrollment. Yes, Sona Kaishu. Tsubaki nodded and turned to Siko and Saya. The two girls looked to Roy for guidance. Go ahead. I'll pick you up after school, Roy reassured them. Siko and Saya followed Tsubaki out of the room. Roy remained, knowing Sona had more to say. Graphia Lucifuge, the silver-haired Extinction Queen, once contended with the Mao Leviathan for the title of the strongest female devil in the underworld. Under her leadership, the Lucifuge clan has become one of the most powerful devil families in the underworld. And as the sole heir of the Lucifuge clan, although your talent is average, I trust you won't bring shame upon the Lucifuge name, Sona said, ostensibly recounting the Lucifuge family's achievements, but her words carried a subtle reprimand. Roy's lips twitched. After such a long preamble, it turned out Sona's concern was his choice of servants, two ordinary humans. Though not as direct as Graphia, her meaning was clear. He couldn't help but find the situation somewhat amusing. He knew Sona and Rias had high standards, but he hadn't realized just how high. Indeed, they held little interest in ordinary humans, unless they possessed sacred gears. Sona hadn't detected Siko's latent potential, hence her veiled criticism. Therefore, despite the pointed nature of her words, Roy felt no anger, only a touch of gratitude. Don't worry, Sona-senpai. I won't disgrace the Lucifuge name, Roy assured her earnestly. A smile finally graced Sona's face. Roy's response seemed to have satisfied her. However, seeing Sona's rare smile, a mischievous thought crossed Roy's mind. Chapter 19, Wave of Tricks, Sona falls into the trap. Roy suddenly turned to Sona. By the way, Sona-senpai. Yes? Didn't you once break off an engagement using a chess game? I did. Sona folded her arms, a knowing look on her face, waiting to see where Roy was going with this. If I were to defeat you in a chess game. Roy began, then hesitated, noticing Sona's amused expression. I mean, hypothetically, if I were to win, would why? I would. Huh? Roy thought he'd misheard. I said, if you defeat me in a chess game, I will become your fiancé, Sona clarified, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. Even she, a composed and intelligent young woman, couldn't help but react to such a bold proposition. However, the honesty of her offer was debatable. Roy was known throughout the underworld as something of a failure, remaining a low-class devil even after more than a decade. The prospect of him defeating Sona was almost laughable. Perhaps her words were meant as an encouragement. But Roy didn't think so. With his cheat abilities, defeating Sona wouldn't be that difficult. Really, Sona-senpai? Of course. As the heir of the Citri clan, I wouldn't joke about such matters. Clearly, Sona didn't believe he could actually win. A victorious smile spread across Roy's face. Then it's settled. I'll be sure to inform my sister of our agreement. Well then, Sona-senpai, I'll take my leave. With that, Roy swiftly exited the student council room. Sona raised her hand to stop him but found he was already gone. She lowered her hand with a sigh, rubbing her forehead. I hope Sarafall doesn't find out about this. I can only imagine what she would do. The thought gave her a headache. She had only meant to encourage him, but things had escalated unexpectedly. Sona's older sister was Sarafall Leviathan, the current Leviathan and one of the 4 great Satans. Sarafall had a cheerful personality and was responsible for diplomatic affairs in the underworld. She specialized in ice magic and had a peculiar fondness for dressing up as a magical girl. Her love for Sona bordered on doting. She would readily wage war against the fallen angels or heaven itself for her sister's sake. If Sarafall learned that Roy was trying to steal her beloved sister, she would undoubtedly come looking for him. And Roy's sister, Graphia, would certainly not stand idly by and watch her brother get bullied. The situation could easily escalate into a clash between 2 Satan-class devils. Hence, Sona's headache. But it was too late now. She could only hope Roy wouldn't spread the news of their agreement. Meanwhile, Roy, his spirits buoyed by his successful maneuver, returned to his classroom. Bucho! Bucho! Kiryu Aika, Murayama, and Kates rushed towards him as he entered. What is it? Roy asked, looking at them curiously. After kendo practice yesterday, we went to the training hall to look for you, Bucho, but you were nowhere to be found. When did you leave, Bucho? We didn't see you go. Just to add, I asked all the other kendo club members, and none of them saw you leave either. The 3 girls peppered him with questions, their concern evident. Roy chuckled wryly. He had used a teleportation circle to return home with Siko and the others yesterday, which explained why they hadn't seen him leave the kendo club. He hadn't realized they would be so worried. Don't worry. I'm fine. I just suddenly remembered something and had to leave, Roy said vaguely, avoiding a full explanation. Until he decided whether or not to make them his servants, he preferred not to reveal his demonic nature. His explanation clearly didn't satisfy them. They puffed out their cheeks and stared at him intently. All right. I'll teach you kendo after school, okay? Roy finally relented under their combined gaze. Yay! The 3 girls cheered in unison, high-fiving each other excitedly. Roy realized he'd been played. They had been waiting for him to take the bait. He didn't need to look to know that Kiryu Aika was the mastermind behind this plan. Soon, class began. The teacher entered with an unfamiliar girl. The girls in the class began whispering amongst themselves. The girl was Saya. Being a second-year student, she had been assigned to Roy's class. Siko, on the other hand, was placed in the third-year class. Saya Takagi. Saya wrote her name on the blackboard. Though she and Roy had formed a close bond, they weren't married yet, so she used her original surname. My name is Saya Takagi. Pleased to meet you all. Saya gave a brief self-introduction from the podium. The other girls in the class eyed her with envy. She was so young, yet possessed such an impressive figure. Her pink twin-tails added to her undeniable cuteness. They sensed that another popular idol was about to join the ranks of the academy's most admired students. All right, Takagi-san, you can take that empty seat over there, the teacher instructed, pointing to the desk behind Roy. Since Roy's deskmate was Aika Kiryu, and the desks in front of him were occupied by Murayama and Kates, the only available spot was behind him. Chapter 20, Roy vs. Siko. Stepping down from the podium, Saya couldn't resist indulging her tsundere nature as she passed Roy. Humph. Perhaps because she couldn't sit next to him, or perhaps simply out of habit, she let out a soft huff. Bucho, do you know Takagi-san? Aika, taken aback by Saya's attitude, asked. Of course, Roy replied. Eh? Are you living together? Yep. Shameless. Aika exclaimed, a blush creeping up her cheeks as she realized she had stumbled upon a secret. So, have you done anything? She whispered, her face crimson. Despite her embarrassment, curiosity won out. Such was the nature of her inquisitive mind. Of course. Let me tell you, Roy readily shared some details with Aika, unfazed by the topic. To his surprise, instead of recoiling in shyness, Aika listened with enthusiastic interest, even contributing some suggestions of her own. Some of the things she mentioned were new even to Roy. He couldn't help but marvel at her boldness. He only engaged in such conversations with her because he understood her personality. Behind them, Saya, thanks to her enhanced demonic hearing, overheard every word. Her face flushed crimson, as red as an apple. However, she couldn't do anything about it. Roy was, after all, her master. But she made a mental note of Aika, who wants to teach Roy such embarrassing things. She wouldn't let her get away with it. After school, it was free activity time. Having promised to teach Aika, Murayama, and Kate's kendo, Roy, after finding Siko, led them to the kendo club. Many girls were already practicing inside. Good afternoon, Bucho. Bucho, you look so handsome today. Bucho, could you please teach us kendo? The female students were excited to see Roy. Most of the girls in the kendo club had joined because of him. Of course, some genuinely enjoyed kendo, like Aika, Murayama, and Kates, who displayed considerable talent in the art. Everyone, please continue practicing. I'll guide you all in a bit, Roy said, accepting their requests. Since he had already agreed to teach Aika, Murayama, and Kates, he figured he might as well instruct everyone. Siko and Saya, observing Roy's popularity at school, felt a swell of pride. Inside his private training room, Roy turned to Siko with a smile. Siko, I know you've been wanting to spar with me, he said. As a kendo prodigy, Siko had achieved remarkable skill. However, Roy was a true monster in the art. She had been deeply impressed the first time she witnessed his swordsmanship, and naturally, as a fellow kendo enthusiast, she yearned to test her skills against him. It wouldn't be a spar, but rather a learning experience. After all, your kendo surpasses mine by far, Siko admitted, shaking her head. Roy didn't dwell on the point. They each picked up a wooden katana and moved to the center of the training room, ready to begin. That must be Busujima Siko-senpai, the new transfer student. She seems quite close to Bucho. From what Bucho said, Busujima-senpai's kendo skills are incredible. It must be amazing to be able to spar with Bucho. I'm so envious. They're even calling each other by their first names. Something tells me they're more than just friends. Aika, Murayama, and Kates whispered among themselves. Murayama, in particular, sensed an unusual connection between Roy and Siko. However, only Aika knew the true nature of the relationship between Roy and both Siko and Saya, the new transfer students. She had gleaned this information from her conversation with Roy that morning. She couldn't help but feel a pang of envy towards the two girls. Let's begin, Siko, Roy said, smiling and gesturing for her to attack. Siko readily accepted the invitation. She charged forward, her wooden katana held firmly in both hands. Strikes, thrusts, slashes, cuts. All kendo techniques revolved around these fundamental movements, including Siko's specialty, Iato. Siko attacked swiftly, but her strikes were ineffective against Roy. He effortlessly parried each of her blows. Seeing her attacks failing to connect, Siko retreated a step, positioning her katana at her left hip, assuming the stance for a Iato draw. The essence of Iato lay in the art of drawing and striking in a single, fluid motion. Roy, in his kendo training, had studied and practiced various sword styles, both from martial arts manuals and fictional sources. He had experimented with techniques from manga and anime, ultimately developing his own unique style, characterized by speed, precision, and overwhelming power. His movements were devoid of unnecessary flourish, each strike imbued with devastating force. Ai! Siko declared, her gaze fixed intently on Roy, before unleashing her strike. Like a flash of light, her katana reached Roy in the blink of an eye. But Roy's wooden katana was already there to meet it. Clack! The two wooden swords collided. Aika, Murayama, and Kates, watching from the sidelines, finally understood what was happening. Amazing! I didn't expect Busujima-senpai's kendo to be so powerful, even on her first day. But Bucho is still stronger. Look, he's effortlessly blocking all of her attacks. Yeah, you're right. That wraps up this part of What If Reborn in Highschool DxD is a Lucifuge. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Quick reminder. The series What If Transmigrated in Bleach World will be going on hold soon, since we've nearly caught up with the author. So now, I will be using the second most popular among the fanfics on the previous poll as the replacement for the series What If Transmigrated in Bleach World. As such, please vote in the poll and let me know which story you'd like to see next. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.